Hello everybody, and welcome to this third national online IFA branch meeting. I'm just going to wait for a few seconds for everyone to join us. Okay, so welcome to those who have joined us so far, and as most of you may know me as Ian Hornsey, I'm obviously a member and on the IFA board as a director and chair of the Members Advisory Committee, and work quite closely with the IFA team on a weekly basis, especially over the last 6 months during the COVID. But great to see so many members joining us for these national events. Obviously, with COVID, the normal branch meetings haven't been able to happen. But as I will mention in a little while, obviously there are the local surgeries that hopefully members can take part in. Our speaker today is Sarah Rigg from Vantage, who I will mention in a little while. Please all bear with us if there's any technical issues. As Linda at the IFA is assisting me and Sarah today with technology, so hopefully it will all work as it should do. Questions and answers. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you should have a Q&A, and what we would ask you to do, if you've got any questions, then please type them in and I will receive them. And I have discussed with Sarah, and what we said is that we'll take questions as we go through Sarah's slides, because obviously it will be more relevant. So please ask me the question and I will put it to Sarah at the time. Today's webinar will be recorded. So obviously, as with the other series, obviously people can request a copy of that if they have missed it. For their CPD record. Just some updates from the IFA. Obviously, we now live in this new world of online material, and from an institute point of view, I'm hoping that all members will agree that we are trying to put together lots of information and webinars for you. And as you can see here, we have quite a few up and coming webinars. The Bounce Back series, the current one is already underway, and obviously those who have signed up for that, obviously there's a further series tomorrow, and details of that of the series can be found on the IFA website, as with all the webinars. And we're trying to put together as much relevant information as possible, and I know the first tax series did go down extremely well and was very relevant. And if you haven't already done so, then please do go online and have a look and sign up if you haven't already done so. As you can see, after the current Bounce Back series, there are the tangible fixed assets, intangibles and investment properties updates. The next national branch meeting will be on the 8th of October. We're also introducing quarterly update webinars, and that will be very up-to-date topics, and further information will be announced on that in due course. There will also be a further tax series. Details are currently being put together by the team, particularly by Jonathan, who I know has joined us today with John Edwards. And I know, as I say, the first tax series did go down extremely well. Thresholds and financial reporting options, form and content of financial statements. Again, if there's any specific areas that members believe that we should be considering, then please send me a question on here, or send it into the IFA, because again, we want to make sure we're providing as much information to members, especially during this time, as possible. As I mentioned earlier, the local branch surgeries are going to continue, and this will be, these are much on a more local basis, where we will be able to see each other on a Zoom meeting. And I know that the ones that have been held so far have gone down really well. It's always nice to see more members participate in those as well. So if you have haven't joined one of those, then please do so, and watch out on the IFA website for the next stage of those branch meetings now that we have the summer behind us. Although I'm sitting here in Southend in my office, and it's 28 degrees outside at the moment, so really nice and sunny. So thanks, Linda. Obviously, a few reminders. CPD requirements. Again, there is no changes in those requirements, so therefore, as members, we all need to ensure that we are keeping up to date and completing our CP requirements and logging it on to your member area within the IFA website. There is also the COVID-19 resource page, which continues to be updated regarding any developments or changes. And again, please refer to that. The member support group, for which I'm involved, as are the other ambassadors and other supporting people, are there to help you. And again, details of that is on the website. We are coming up to obviously the time for renewals, and obviously the IFA and the team have agreed not to increase any of the renewal fees this year. But I would ask all members to ensure that when the renewal packs come through, please do try and complete them as soon as possible. Remembering that obviously there is a membership renewal, but also a firm renewal. And I know there's still some confusion. It's getting better, and obviously we're trying to make the mechanics of it all flow easier for you. A lot of the forms are pre-populated online, but please, if I can ask for all members to do that as soon as possible. And again, any queries, please refer to the membership team at the IFA. Obviously, I'm here to support all members, as I know my other ambassadors are. And again, as I said at the beginning, this is all about bringing to you, both from a webinar, but also from the national branch meetings, up-to-date information. And as you know, we work closely as a national strategic partner with Vantage Fee Protect, and Sarah, who I think you can see on the screen, has agreed to take part in today's branch meeting. Sarah, obviously, as you can see, started her working life with 10 years at HMRC before moving into the fee protection world. So obviously, as you can see, she's been in fee protection for quite a while now, Sarah. And again, you know, I know Sarah's been around the country talking at different branches, and I know obviously a lot of members I've either got fee protection or have heard Sarah or her team talk. But again, based on what's happening out there and what we are doing for clients, especially regarding the COVID schemes, we felt that actually this is now the right time to consider what fee protection is all about and understand how it helps us as members, certainly in practice. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah, and as I say, if you've got any questions as Sarah's speaking or going through her slides, please send them over to me, and I can then obviously keep control of those and then interact when I feel appropriate. Sarah, I'll hand over to you.
Okie dokie, right. Good morning, everybody, or rather good afternoon. Thank you first and foremost to Ian and the IFA for inviting me along. As Ian's mentioned, I think it is a good opportunity to just, you know, sort of go back to basics and really sort of just, you know, sort of go back to, you know, sort of looking at what fee protection is, how it can work. It has evolved over the years, certainly the years in which I've worked in the industry. So, you know, sort of previous perhaps perceptions of what it is and what it does, you know, sort of hopefully we can, you know, sort of really sort of bring you up to date with, you know, sort of where we are and what we're doing, you know, sort of to help, you know, our practices in these unusual times. Right, let me just share that presentation. Okie dokie, right. Bear with me a moment. Okay. There we go. So that's me. I thought I'd, you know, sort of really just start, you know, sort of proceedings today by just, you know, sort of going over, you know, sort of, I suppose, some of the the figures that we probably are all familiar with, but it is relevant to what we do. The revenue are sort of targeted to raise additional taxes through inquiries. And as you'll see from those figures there, that target is going up year on year, as with any business. We haven't seen what the figures were for 1920, but you can be pretty sure that they're going to have gone up again. And obviously, moving forward, it's going to be critical to recovery, particularly post-COVID. We've seen the figures, government debt topping 2 trillion. The revenue have always been the department of choice to raise those additional revenues. So unfortunately, I think inquiries is something we're going to see a lot more of. Okay. So really, just to touch on who we are at Vantage, we're one of the top 4 providers of fee protection in the marketplace at present. We're not the biggest, but actually, that suits us. We have some really, good clients, a strong client base, some of the top firms right the way through to some of the smallest firms, and we're focused on providing a good service across the board. It's not whoever is the biggest gets the better service. That's not how we choose to operate. As I say, really customer focused. Okay, so actually, I just wanted to go back because I just want to, Linda, to raise a quick poll to see how many of you have fee protection at the moment. Okay, it's looking like an interesting mix. Okay, so 30% of you have. Oh no, we're dropping down. Oh no, 30%. So actually, I mean, a decent proportion, but actually there's some work we can do there to bring a few more people on board. Certainly, Ian is one of our clients, so I think he can certainly, advocate what we do.
Yes, I can, Sarah. So.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so really I suppose just to go back, and I was thinking about those of you that don't have fee protection, what it is. In a nutshell, it's an insurance policy that's built to cover your costs in helping out your clients when they get an inquiry. So, in that sense, they're not going to get an extra bill, and you're going to get paid for the work. And I think that is actually something that's really important. Quite often you'll end up in a situation where the client has an inquiry, or, it can seem pretty simple to them. The attitude may be, you're my accountant, you sort it out, I don't want to pay you for that extra time, or you don't feel able to charge them for the full amount of time that you spend. And that's where the policy steps in and really comes into its own. It makes sure that client relationship is protected, in the event that you find yourself spending hours dealing with something on their behalf, and particularly, when they haven't actually done anything wrong. And we see a lot of that. The revenue will open inquiries and, come away with absolutely nothing. So, for the client then to be, lumbered with a bill really is something that is not going to be very well received. There is also the opportunity to bring in extra income to the practice. I'll touch on that a bit later when we talk about the scheme marketing. Okay, so the policy, and obviously that's going to be, the main part of it, is, very wide ranging. And when I started out in fee protection, it was very much a case of, have you got a full inquiry? Have you got a pay-as-you-earn dispute or a VAT dispute? If so, let's see what we can do here. And claims would be authorised on that basis. And that reflected really what the revenue were doing. A lot of inspectors sat in rooms, opening full books and records reviews. I vividly remember, working in my local revenue office and having, a floor full of inspectors doing just that. Things have moved on. on, the revenue have obviously taken on responsibility for a lot more areas, and as a consequence, the policy is expanded to reflect that. So, you know, it goes right from the point of, you know, you're notified, for example, of pay-as-you-earn or VAT review. You know, the policy will step in at that point, so you can get involved, you know, sort of in you know, sort of helping the client answer questions, you know, at that very early stage. So it's not something that then, you know, they get perhaps a little bit excited, or, you know, perhaps answers a question, you know, sort of leading the, you know, the officer in a certain direction. You can be there and on hand to help them so that that doesn't happen. But it's much more wide ranging than that. So full and aspect inquiries one would expect, but then, you know, sort of moving on to other areas: minimum wage, child tax credit, student loans, auto enrolment, making tax digital. You know, we're waiting to see what happens with that. But also then, you know, thinking about the latest stage, the COVID-19. Never before have I ever seen the government, you know, write legislation on the hoof, you know, in quite the way they did there, and we've reacted accordingly, and that comes into effect immediately. You know, it's not from the next renewal. So I just thought I'd touch on a few, you know, sort of case studies. I think it's always really useful just to put it into context as to how the policy works. This particular scenario is one it was a recent claim. I've spoken with the claims team, and they've given me a few, you know, examples of what they've seen of late. This was a scenario: barrister with a split of you know, sort of fees coming from legal aid and private work. Obviously, you know, sort of you know, the private work is probably more highly paid than the legal aid, and on that basis, you know, the revenue wanted to make, you know, sort of some inquiries just to make sure that they hadn't understated it. You know, this was one where, you know, we agreed the fees. We saw the letter, we agreed the fees. Off the practice went, you know, sort of 9 months of letters back and forth to the revenue. Cost of £2,500. We met the costs, and the revenue came out with nothing. And this isn't unusual. We do see that scenario happen. I mean, this is another one, a recruitment agency. Again, an inquiry came out of the blue, no reason to expect it. You know, a lot of time is spent, you know, 22 months, a lot of uncertainty for the client. You know, just having that situation where they know they're not going to end up with a bill, but their accountant is in a position to really put their best foot forward in terms of, you know, sort of making sure that, you know, that the representations are made fully, and the best outcome is reached. Again, IT contractor. If you've ever seen an IR35 type inquiry, you know, I used to handle them, very protracted, lots of questions, not really going anywhere. Suddenly, you know, sort of they start, you know, sort of getting to the point, and they can last for years. I have seen that be the case. This one, you know, it followed exactly that path. For whatever reason, the revenue decided to stop. And all the fees were, you know, were met in full. So, you know, a good outcome there. Oh, sorry. Again, and this is probably one of the revenue's hottest areas, I would say, is property, or certainly has been over recent time. They're obsessed. They think everybody's got lots of properties, and obviously some people have, but not everybody. So this was one, and again, this demonstrates the sort of thing that we see is it's not somebody sat in a revenue office picking up a file thinking, oh, that doesn't look quite right. This one I would expect has come from them profiling, you know, sort of the accounts. They're looking for, you know, sort of differences, and in this instance, that they had more expenses in a year, and the reason being there was damage to the property. They had to demonstrate, obviously, that was the case. Luckily they had photographs that demonstrated that was costs genuinely incurred, and in actual fact came out with a repayment. And then, you know, £3,000 worth of fees were met by the policy. So that just gives you a feel for some of the sorts of scenarios that, you know,
Sarah, can I interact? I've got a couple of questions come through. First question from Christine. How often did I assume members claim costs where no additional tax was payable. Like you said, obviously sometimes the revenue make these in-depth inquiries and actually go away happy, which is lovely. But obviously, I think the question is saying, well, how often do you see that happening in the client, in members that you look after?
Yeah, I mean, quite frequently, actually. You know, I mean, those, you know, those are a snapshot of the sorts of claims that we have. But yes, we do see that. You know, more often than not, it's a slight adjustment unless there's something that's seriously gone wrong. But yes, that is quite frequent.
And I would agree with that, Sarah, because I say I've had, as Sarah said, that you know we use you as the fee protection provider, and we'll go on to how you can provide that to your clients in due course. Sarah will explain that, but just to explain to members that you know inquiries do happen, and therefore the revenue aren't always right in what they do, or can't find anything. And as Sarah said, you know, it takes that pain away of having that discussion with the client about how you cover your time. Because Sarah's absolutely right that a lot of clients think that because you've already done the work, that, well, there can't be anything wrong, and you've got nothing to do. And I've heard that a lot, to be fair, and I know other members have heard that as well. And it's about, you know, today we all have to accept that, yes, we're here to help our clients, that's the main thing, and obviously keep our clients compliant. But also we're here to run a business, you know, we're not here for fun, and we have to make a profit, and your time is valuable. And therefore this is, from my point of view, you know, a safeguard that actually I can spend quality time on dealing with an inquiry because I know I'm going to get paid, and I'm not going to have a difficult discussion with a client who believes I've already done the work and why should they pay me again. So hopefully, Christine, that's answered your question. I've got another question. You may want to defer this, Sarah, you may want to come on to this. But how is the cost of the fee worked out?
In terms of what we charge in terms of premiums?
Yes, I'm not sure if you've got that later on in the scene, but or if you want to just reply to that.
I'll touch on the, you know, sort of the pricing, sort of, you know, sort of towards the end.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So just, you know, I suppose just and this is obviously very relevant. What we're seeing right now. We did, you know, we all know that the revenue had a period where they stopped their inquiries. You know, at the height of the pandemic. It didn't last very long. They are back at their desks, and existing inquiries are progressing and obviously coming to conclusion. But what we are seeing is, you know, and again, we'll have seen this in the press, certainly the media are all over this last week. They're looking at the measures that they've put in place because of the pandemic. We know that task forces have been set up to look at this. It's not going to go away. I read an article yesterday, 11,000 letters have been sent out regarding suspected irregularities, and they're anticipating 27,000, you know, sort of cases are high risk, with up to 3.5 billion at stake. So, you know, that's quite a significant contribution to the cost that they've incurred. Thought might be useful. We have already seen some claims in that regard, and this is an example of one of the letters that's going out. It's quite an interesting one to see. They're not very specific about it, you know, sort of they're obviously identifying that you've had a grant, and they're not sure that you've had the right amount. So the net result is you're then going to have to go back over all of your claims potentially, and review them to see if there's any irregularities. So there's a lot of time and effort involved in that. You know, it may be that there is nothing wrong, and there's a number of scenarios where really they, you know, quite easy, you know, sort of to identify somebody that's coming back off parental leave, somebody, you know, that has been, you know, sort of working, you know, sort of on transferred over from another payroll, for example. So there are explanations, but they are pointing, you know, sort of the accountant or the the business owner to go back through the records. They are, sort of happy for you to, sort of make any corrections within a time period. I think it is it's the later of 90 days or the 20th of October. So there'll be no penalties if you correct it by that point, but it would appear that they are then going to start, sort of applying penalties where there has been errors, made. So yeah, quite interesting. I think we're going to start to see a few more of those coming through. The revenue aren't ready. Interestingly, they want to reply by the 22nd of September, but I gather they're not quite ready to deal with it. But they will be.
I just wondered, Sarah. Sorry, Sarah. I just wondered. I know we probably didn't do a poll, and maybe we should have done. I'm not sure if Linda's. I just wondered if or members could just send me a note through on the Q&As. Has any members started to have those inquiries?
That would be interesting to see, actually.
Yeah. I think Linda's good, but I think she probably can't set that up in time. So.
Okay. Oh well. So yeah. So what we're expecting to see, I think, definitely, obviously, more regarding the job retention scheme, the self-employment scheme. There's some interesting stories as to whether you're adversely affected or not. I've certainly spoken with a number of practices that have disengaged clients who they're not comfortable with what they want to put forward. So that's going to take a while, obviously, for that to filter through. But that's going to be a big area for me. I think, as much as anything, the measures that they put in place and how well they handled them, I was really surprised. The revenue are not known for their efficiencies. I think they did really well. Obviously, sort of, as we're saying, sort of some people have claimed perhaps when they weren't necessarily due to do so. But I think it shows what their capabilities are, and that's what we'd already started to see at the beginning of the year was, sort of a step up in terms of inquiries, sort of what they're looking at. They've been very focused around, VAT, for example, has been a big area for claims over the last few years, pay as you earn, IL35, all of those sorts of things. Looking at property, they've been really, it's been really obvious to us as to those sort of areas that they've been looking at. But we'd started to see a lot more, and as I say, sort of profiling for different irregularities. So,
sorry, Sarah, could I just mention there, because you mentioned a very interesting point, that actually you've seen some of your clients disengage. And obviously, I need to remind members of the obligations regarding anti-money laundering and process of crime. I know Tim Pinkney is joined us today. He's in the background there somewhere. But some of the bounce back series, if some members have watched it regarding the current fraud situation, please ensure that you are aware of your requirements regarding reporting, because obviously this is an area that has suddenly been thrust upon everyone. And yes, genuine mistakes, have happened and will happen. But I think we all need to be mindful that it has been easy for people to claim and maybe shouldn't have claimed. And I think we need to make sure we're doing our due diligence and reporting if we believe that there has been some errors or deliberate situations. Sorry, Sarah.
No, that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, I mean, Ian's absolutely right. It's been very easy to sort of to make use of the scheme that's been put in place. Okay,
sorry, Sarah. Could I say, just trying to involve members. My colleague Ian Clark, the London ambassador, he, like me, and I'm sure a lot of us, we've been very strict with our clients and checked the information and ensure that they're not doing something that they shouldn't have done. And as Ian's done, ask them to sign statements of so they understand the rules, etc. And I think that's important, that as members, as accountants, we need to protect ourselves. And I know in accountancy age or online from Friday, there was a couple of cases where accountants have been incorporated within the frauds. So please, it's all about protecting ourselves.
Absolutely. Okay, so I mean, moving on to how we can help, and you have the policy in place. The way that we work is that it's quite simple, and I think that's quite critical. You're busy people, so a simple claims process. We have an online claims portal that's recently been upgraded, which makes it very, very user friendly. So it's a case of sort of uploading the letter, the notification letter, an estimate of your costs. And the majority of those claims will just go straight through, authorised within 24 hours, at the outset 48. That said, if you need an immediate decision, our claims handlers are very experienced. They've got a tax background, they're there on hand to help. And it may be that you've just got something that you're not entirely sure whether it fits within the scope of the policy, and they're always happy to have a chat about what you've got, or if it's something you need a quick decision on, they'll run that through really quickly for you. As I say, majority of the claims go through the claims portal. This is a snapshot of what that looks like. So you've got a good overview of everything that's going on, the correspondence that's been uploaded, the payments that we've made, and we work on a, it's totally up to you whether you bill, sort of with interim bills, or whether you just want to collect, sort of the costs at the end of the inquiry. But we do ask that, sort of we're kept up to date and sort of before you incur the costs, ideally, sort of we know exactly, sort of what sort of costs we're looking at. But you get a great overview of what's going on through the portal. Nice and easy to use, as I say. Just quickly upload the correspondence, an estimate at the time, off you go. It's authorised, and get the best outcome for your clients. This is another part of the portal which sort of is reflective of sort of the clients, and again you can see who's, particularly if you go for an optional scheme where the client decides whether or not they want to be part of it. You get an overview of who's on board, sort of what sort of areas are on board. So we break down clients into sort of limited companies, sole traders, personal tax. So it's quite nice, user friendly, gives you a good overview of what's going on with your scheme. Marketing support, and I think this is something that sort of can get overlooked. We talk to you about the insurance policy, but actually it's then how do you position that with your clients. So sort of you can talk about inquiries, sort of the sorts of scenarios that you get, but what we do is we'll tailor the marketing to suit you. So sort of a lot of marketing collateral, but including training perhaps for your staff members if you've got staff members. So just giving them sort of the key pointers, and also as much as anything, handling objections, why people think that they don't need it. This is quite interesting insofar as some people think they've got sort of this sort of policy through be it the NFU or the Federation of Small Businesses. Some think they've got it through their bank, and to be perfectly honest, it's very, very limited. I think sort of in terms of whether the range of items that are covered, the type of inquiries that are covered, it's probably quite limited to full inquiries, which, as I've already said, we don't see a lot of. But also, it doesn't necessarily provide for you as their accountant to deal with the work, and that's quite important. Sort of somebody who knows you, who knows your business affairs, representing you, is always going to get a slightly better outcome, or rather a much better outcome in some instances, than somebody who doesn't necessarily know you, doesn't know your business, and actually has just been handled a case that, frankly, it's just one of 10 cases perhaps they've got going on at any given time, and they're looking to get a solution rather than the best answer. So when it comes to marketing, we give you a lot of guidance. We can undertake, sort of a mail shot to clients, be that by, sort of a physical mailing, or be that by email. We've moved to doing that for quite a lot of our clients more recently, particularly with people working from home or getting more familiar with technology. We can even collect the money. We work with you to make sure that actually it runs as easily as possible with minimum disruption to the rest of the practice. So examples of the sorts of marketing literature that we use, you know, sort of lots of it can be, you know, sort of tailored to suit you. We brand it up. We certainly do that for Ian, for Devonport's, you know, and to all intents and purposes, you know, it's you, it's your scheme, you know, and it's you conveying the message to your clients. You know, again, you know, sort of just really sort of adding a bit more meat to the bones when you're talking to clients, you know, things like frequently asked questions, as I say, you know, sort of the objection handling, you know, why do I think I need this, what's going on, you know, all of those sorts of things that just put it into context. And likewise claims examples, they can look at that and think, actually, do you know what, I can see why I might get an inquiry. So giving them, you know, as much detail as you can without, you know, sort of overwhelming them, I think that's the important thing. So, you know, we have online web shops, so, you know, sort of the literature goes out, they can, you know, if for example we do it by email, they can click through, go through to as I say, what we call a web shop. It's branded with your logo, you know, we have it programmed with your pricing, and, you know, sort of the client can then go on, pay with their credit card, download the literature, they're on cover straight away, so that's quite nice. Moving on, we've got some, you know, sort of other technology that we use. So our Vantage portal, lots of information that we have there, and I'll come on to that in a bit more detail before. Our marketing wizard, you know, sort of that's a mixture of you know, sort of the hard copy and electronic mailings I've already spoken about, but we're doing that now, so it's not coming soon. And then the premium portal, you can see exactly who's on cover. Okay, so moving away, I suppose, from the, you know, the insurance, you know, sort of the issue of inquiries. Actually, for a lot of our practices, you know, that they take the policy as a, you know, for the eventuality that an inquiry happens. They don't necessarily see a lot of inquiries, or certainly haven't done over recent years. That may well change moving forward, but they really value our technical support team. So we've got you know, a team with a vast experience of knowledge as far as tax and VAT issues are concerned. They're contactable by telephone and by email, and they can even take on consultancy work. So, you know, and I think, you know, sort of Ian in particular, you know, can advocate that. He's used, you know, sort of our team for, you know, some more complex matters, but it doesn't have to be complex matters. It may be that, you know, you're a small practice, you get an inquiry land in January, and you just haven't got the time to deal with it. And if it's, you know, sort of you're an insured practice and it's an insured client, then one of the team can handle it, you know, sort of, you know, side by side with you. So, you know, and advise every step of the way. It's, you know, they're there, you know, sort of as a really useful resource. So yeah, certainly that it becomes a very, very important, you know, sort of part of you know, sort of the whole offering, really. It's almost like having an extended tax department, you know, that's, you know, sort of how a lot of our practices will use that. And you know, I've worked in tax, I know what it's like. You get a query or something crops up, you come up with an answer, and for whatever reason, that sort of self-deprecating, you know, sort of part of you thinks, why do I think that's right? And if there's nobody sat beside you to just say yes or no, yeah, you're on the right track, just picking up the phone or dropping them a line, you know, is a nice way of just confirming that you know, you're going down the right path. Again, you know, sort of we also offer access to our legal helplines, which again has been really important during this last little while. You know, the whole entitlement to furlough, to laying people off. Unfortunately, some people are facing the issues of redundancy, and our team are on hand, and that's free of charge as well. So that's open to both you and to your clients. The technical advice line is obviously limited to the practice. The reason why we do that is we want them to ask you the question. We don't want to put your opportunities to earn fees at risk. Okay, so again, sort of moving on to some of the other things that we do. So we are the approved fee protection provider by Tolly's. So they put together for us, for our clients, bespoke webinars on a monthly basis. They're usually presented by Rebecca Bennyworth, who, sort of if you follow, sort of the presentations that she does, she's very engaging. They're CPD accredited, and they come complete with course notes. So again, just another addition, keeping up to date and getting that important CPD on board. Another publication talking about revenue powers, tax investigations, the latest cases that are going on. Just another nice way of keeping up to date. We also, and this is our legal part of our business, offer access for the practice to our Quest Office product, which has 800 documents relating to everything: employment, health and safety, recruitment procedures, policies, template contracts, and we give that to the practice for free. So that's quite nice as well. Technical updates, so regular bulletins. On our Vantage portal, we have frequently asked questions. So there's a lot in there on top of the policy. Okay, so turning to the question of premiums, and how we price this. What we do is we offer it, and this is typical of the industry, we offer the policy on what we call either an all client or an optional basis. So on an all client scheme, it's quite self-explanatory, but we cover everybody. So we ask for you details of the clients that you've got, usually falling into the categories of limited companies, partnerships, sole traders, and personal tax clients. The reason being, somebody that's got a limited company is going to cover the premium for a limited company, covers the directors, the company secretary, the spouses, partners, legal partners. So there's quite a lot in there. So that premium is slightly higher. Likewise, the partnership premium covers off the partners, and then sole trader is at a reduced rate, and then personal tax only again is at another reduced rate. So what we do is we ask you for details of the inquiries that you've had in the last 3 years, your charge out rates, and the number of clients that you've got, and we'll put together a bespoke quotation on that basis. On the optional basis, it depends whether you've had a policy elsewhere, so we'll ask you for client take-up, but in that instance, it's very much a case of, we don't know who's going to take it up, and that's always a concern for people, particularly when they're starting a scheme for the first time. We don't know is the answer, but we price it, hopefully competitively, looking at your charge out rate, normally sort of thinking, by the time sort of you've added on insurance premium tax and perhaps a margin for the practice, and that's something that most practices will do on both bases, is charge it on and make a sort of a little bit of money out of it, if nothing else, to cover off the time speaking with sort of somebody like myself, and just getting it all set up. So, I mean, really, sort of in terms of, how to progress, we ask for you to complete the practice profile form with that information. We, get in touch. We'll have a chat with you as to what your specific requirements are, and we're quite keen to do that and really help the marketing process. There's no point putting a policy in place and then, sort of leaving you to flounder when it comes to talking to your clients. We give you all of that marketing material, or give you suggestions as to the best way to get them on board. Okay, any questions?
Yes, so Sarah, I've got a couple of questions about what's covered under the policy. I know you've given a brief overview, but obviously we've looked at cases where HM revenue customers haven't found any discovery or issued any interest or penalties. So just wondered if you could talk about those cases that revenue do find something, there are adjustments, and where the policy covers or doesn't cover, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, more often than not, there's going to be a small adjustment. You know, sort of just a, you know, sort of, for example, the one with the property rents actually resulted in a, you know, in a small repayment, and that's really, I suppose, comes out of dealing with things with the fine tooth comb. But you know, sort of what we don't cover, you know, sort of putting together records that should already exist. At the end of the day, you know, sort of that's routine accountancy. Rewriting the records, for example, if perhaps, you know, you've taken over a client and the previous accountant actually found that they haven't done a very good job, you know, we won't cover those costs. And likewise for rectification, if you go through that, you know, sort of situation. You know, when it comes to serious irregularities, obviously we will take a view on that as to, you know, sort of how far we go. It may be that cover is withdrawn, particularly if you find that there's been a serious irregularity. But you know, that most situations, it's going to be a case that, you know, within reason, that there may be a slight adjustment or an adjustment, and those fees will be covered.
Thanks, Sarah. And the other question, I think, just to maybe to explain a bit further, is the difference between an all-client scheme and a client-only scheme. Just maybe if you could explain that a little bit further. So.
Yeah, certainly. So the all-client scheme, as I say, covers everybody. Now, it's then up to you as to how you deal with that. So, you know, sort of a lot of our all-client practices will still market it out to their clients and hope that the people who've paid for it will you know, they'll raise enough to cover the cost of the all-client. And you know, so we would normally recommend that you've got a reasonable take up before you go down that path. So lots of people will start with the optional basis scheme and then move on to the all client scheme. Some just factor the cost into their pricing. So take the all client scheme, we build it into our fees, because you know, when we spread the risk over the whole practice, it does reduce the unit rates. So compared with the optional basis scheme, so it's really up to, you know, sort of the practice as to how they make that recovery. Where it's an optional basis scheme, it's very much a case of we've contacted our clients, we've contacted all of our clients, and we do advise you to contact all of your clients because we want to get a reasonable spread of the risk. Invite them, the ones that take it up, you declare to us the ones that take it up, and that's probably one of the bigger differences. Where you take the all clients scheme, we don't need to know. In the event of an inquiry, what we do is we just run through some checks with you to make sure that they were your clients at the time that the inquiry commenced. So be it a lettered engagement, 64-8 holder, whatever that is, to demonstrate that you know, sort of they were your client at the start of the inquiry.
Thanks, Sarah. Just to remind members that if you've got any questions, if you could just type them in the Q&A, and then I can obviously talk them out to Sarah. I know a couple of you raised your hands, but unfortunately the system doesn't work that way. So again, Sarah, you know, obviously working with you, and the interesting point about the different ways of, and I know obviously as a small, you know, members are, you know, some members have small practices, that there is a cost factor to be considered here. And therefore, you know, the starting off of client only, so you sell it to your clients to cover the fee you're paying you, does work quite well at the beginning. I think from my point of view, that's how we started. So some clients were on cover, some clients weren't, and it is a difficult decision to go from one way of doing it to the other to cover all clients, because there is obviously an increased cost. But we found that actually looking at the scaling up of that, the overall cost to the practice wasn't that great, in as much how much we could then sell it to all our clients, or at least take into account that clients are covered whether or not they have paid for it or not. And again, it comes back to yourself and having that backup that actually you're going to get your fees paid by Vantage in dealing with an inquiry, even if you know, revenue, the client isn't necessarily happy to pay you. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yes, absolutely. That's you know, sort of why a lot of practices will take the all client option is, you know, sort of it covers everybody, and they make sure that they get their fees. It's then a case of if one of those people that didn't pay you for it, you know, sort of gets an inquiry. Yes, it's up to you. Do you claim? Do you tell them that you've claimed? If you do, how you pitch that to them? Now, you know, sort of quite a few practices will just say, well, you know, we've got a good relationship with our insurer, so on and so forth. If you pay, you know, sort of the premium, backdate it, then that's fine. You know, sort of that they were willing to accept the inquiry. Some will just say, no, the client didn't pay for it. I'm not going to claim for them. But it does make sure that you're reimbursed, and I think that is one of the most important elements, really. That.
I think just coming back to I'm just waiting for some more questions to come through, but one of the areas I know on the loan charge inquiries going on at the moment, I know that's a difficult area for you to consider. Yeah. I just wondered if you wanted to mention that at all.
Yeah, I mean, you know, sort of obviously they're going on. I mean, where we do have, you know, sort of concerns about an inquiry, you know, sort of, or where it might go, it doesn't necessarily, you know, sort of preclude it from cover. What we will do in that sort of situation is accept the claim, but we will remove the interim billing facility, and potentially, you know, if it turns out that the client is, you know, sort of held to account by the revenue, then obviously, you know, sort of if they've done something wrong, then we're not necessarily going to be reimbursing the cost, but we will then look at the outcome. So we'll always be willing to see, you know, sort of how things pass through.
I've had a question through, Sarah, about specifically the cost of the fee protection. You know, of a firm of around 85k, 70 limited companies, 70 individual tax returns. Now, again, I'm not saying you can answer that, and I know you are happy to take direct contact from members and have a non-committed discussion with them. But yeah. I just wondered if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, sort of it's always best to have that conversation just to really sort of sense check. Obviously, the clients, you know, sort of obviously we've got an idea of the client numbers, but also we then need to understand what sort of inquiries they've had, what their charge out rates are, because, you know, at the end of the day, it is insurance, you know, it's risk based. We need to put together something that, you know, sort of is realistic, you know, sort of, you know, and that's making sure that there's enough in the pot to pay the claims without any, you know, sort of issues. And obviously, you know, sort of we don't do it for free. There's, you know, sort of a margin to be had, but we try to keep those prices as realistic as possible. I think, you know, sort of just one thing that I'd perhaps, you know, sort of like to add and touch on that perhaps haven't covered off is when it comes to, you know, sort of the pricing onwards to the client. Obviously, we offer a price, you know, sort of either for the whole practice or unit pricing for individual clients. That is then subject to insurance premium tax. There's nothing we can do about that, and it's then up to the practice as to what they want to charge for it moving forward, so they can, you know, sort of add in a margin as I mentioned, but then in more instances than not, that's then going to be subject to VAT unless you are regulated to sell insurance products, in which case you would have what we call a regulated scheme, and the individual becomes the policy holder, whereas in most instances it's a non-regulated scheme. You know, you actually offer it to the client as a service with VAT. One of the there's been some changes in, you know, sort of the whole insurance, you know, sort of world, which would require a practice to disclose the amount of commission that they're earning, and obviously some don't necessarily want to do that. So the non-regulated route is normally the preferred route to offering it to clients.
Thanks, Sarah. One of my fellow ambassadors, Ermal from Kent, has actually asked a question: could you actually tell us exactly what wouldn't be covered, or what taxes wouldn't be covered, or inquiries wouldn't be covered specifically?
Yeah. So the policy, and as I've mentioned, is quite wide ranging. You know, we don't cover custom and excise. I think that's one that quite often comes up. You know, that's more of a customs issue, so we don't cover that. We don't cover you know, sort of overseas taxes. So it is very much, you know, sort of UK based taxes, and so, you know, we don't cover overseas elements. In terms of, you know, sort of the scenarios where we wouldn't cover a claim, obviously something that's pre-existing, so the client comes to you with an inquiry, that's not going to be covered. As I mentioned previously, it's very much a case of, you know, sort of they take out the cover for potential incident that might happen, and they have to be your client at that time. We don't, you know, sort of accept, you know, sort of scenarios where the situation existed at the inception of the policy, and we don't, you know, sort of cover, as I mentioned, the cost of you know, reconstructing records or constructing records if they haven't, you know, sort of been put in place. We won't cover, and this is an important one, inquiries raised under Code of Practice 9, and that will be that's true of all the providers in the marketplace. At the end of the day, a Code of Practice 9 inquiry is a criminal investigation. Code of Practice 8 is slightly different. That's a civil matter, and we will normally meet up to £10,000 worth of fees dealing with a Code of Practice 8 inquiry. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's insurance. It can't be associated with a criminal, what's perceived to be a criminal activity, and they won't open a Code of Practice 9 inquiry unless they have reason to believe that that is the case. Okay, so you know, late returns. So we cover returns that are late up to 90 days, and likewise amended returns. But, you know, anything that's late outside of, you know, sort of outside of 90 days, for example, you end up with a client that you know, comes to you with perhaps 3 years worth of tax returns that you've got to complete. That's going to be an automatic red flag to the revenue. They'll have a look at that, and so there is a heightened risk around those. Other than that, you know, sort of tax avoidance schemes. So there's been a lot of press about that. You know, really the aggressive schemes have very much, you know, sort of fallen out of favour these days. But we won't cover those. And then anything that's where, you know, perhaps there's been professional negligence, we won't be covering those either.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm just conscious of time. Same question from two members actually. Can a client take out a policy directly with you or a competitor? Yes, they can. If you've got an odd client and running a scheme isn't, you know, sort of for your practice, yes, they can. They will pay a higher fee for it, and you know, sort of normally we reserve the right for our own in-house consultant to handle the inquiry rather than you as the accountant. So, you know, it goes back to what I was saying about the benefits of you knowing your client's affairs. Obviously, we're going to try and get the best outcome, but you know, there is a slight difference there. And John Edwards has put an interesting thought across actually, and exactly what we do. Obviously, you can spread the costs of the fee protection, i.e. the cost to you guys, over I think 12 months, isn't it, Sarah, or 10 or 12 months?
No, 12 months. We're happy to spread the cost. Normally that's for where they take a whole practice cover. The reason being is, you know, clients can join partway through the year. You then end up with a fluctuating direct debit. It starts to get a bit messy. So, you know, on that basis, we normally say, you know, declare the clients and pay over, you know, sort of that additional premium, you know, sort of as it arises. But yes, we do, and we tend to do it actually over 10 months because, you know, sort of we push it back a month to give you the opportunity to get the money in. You know, sort of the majority of the time, you know, there's a fixed start date. Most clients will join at that point, so it gives you a chance to collect that money in before you start paying us the direct debit.
Excellent. I think that's answered all the questions. Sarah, many thanks. I think it's important that, you know, we did this today because, you know, although we don't want this to come over as a sales opportunity, and far from that, it is all about best practice. and fee protection has been around a long time, but I do know that there is some confusion and misunderstanding on it, isn't there, Sarah? So
Yes,
I think it was very important. It was great to see so many members join today as well, as there has been in the last couple of national events. So Sarah, many thanks for your time today. I'm sure you'll be happy to speak to any of the members who want to make contact with you. And I know Linda will obviously put them in touch with you, or vice versa if they so wish. Can I thank everybody for joining us today? Obviously, it's great to see many of you join, even though I can't physically see you. There will be further national branch meetings taking place. Obviously, I remind you of the webinars, but thank you for attending, and obviously keep an eye on the IFA website for further events. Thank you, Sarah, again, and thank you for attending.